This is Marcia Gregg, and I'm at the home of Vevarelle Esty on her father's homesteaded ranch about 5 miles north of Gunnison. And we're going to go back into the life of Vevarelle and the early days when her father, John Alcott, came to Gunnison. That's a good place to start, isn't it, Vevarelle?
Something like that.
Good.
Okay. Well, my father was born and raised in Brunswick, New Jersey. But due to his mother's sickness and death, he had to stay home and take care of the kids during the day while his father worked. And so he went to night school to get his education. And when he graduated, he ended up with a shipbuilder's apprenticeship. That's better than a carpenter because the water mustn't get in the boat. And then when he was a boy, he told about some perfect cattle, red, white-faced cattle. They led down the street and he followed them for blocks and blocks. Well, then later when he went to Denver, after he'd graduated and after the kids had got older, his younger brothers and sisters, he came to Denver. And the first few trains had come in. They only had a big platform to put their luggage on. And the ticket agent sat out there, outside, no cover, and took care of things. And when he got there, he was hungry, so all he had with him was his tool chest and 60-some cents. He went to a restaurant and got a cup of coffee and a piece of pie, and came back, and two men were sitting on his chest, and another walked over and put his foot on it. They all wanted him to go to work because talented people and educated people in that type of work were all interested. Everybody was saying, "There's gold in them there mountains. We gotta get it. There's gold out there." And so the first job he took was at the old Brown Palace Hotel. They built the frame up, and then they didn't know how to put the circular stairway in. So he drew the pattern, and then they put him to work. And he worked there building that, and then they put him in as overseer. And then they put him in as boss, and he didn't want two jobs of that kind, but he had them. But he had a lot of energy. And then the hours he wasn't working there, some other fellow had a place that he wanted work done on, and he'd go down there and work some at nights or early mornings.
Also in Denver?
Yes, all in Denver. And then he got a little shack that he bought the ground on and built on the corner close to where he was working. And he worked there for, I'd have to look on some old records on how long he worked there. But anyway, he got good wages. And so he was satisfied and he liked to work. And then he was hearing about this country out here. And Sidney Jacknick became a friend. And he was telling everybody, there's a great country over in that country, way out in where there's Indians, but it's great. And he had gone through this country with an Indian guide before, and he had seen it.
This was...
While he was still working at...
Oh, I see, okay.
But then Sylvester Richardson had come through the country with an Indian guide and had seen it. But they'd walked all that way and lived off the land as they did. They even taught him what mushrooms to eat. Anyway, then he told about it, and so they had an expedition, and they came to Gunnison and checked it. When they first went, a storm came in, and they had to leave their wagons, and they went to the Indian agency. And the agent told them that they weren't on Indian ground, told them where they could go and where they couldn't go. And so then they came on, and when they got to Gunnison, they camped down where the three rivers meet and rested their horses and looked around some. And then their first expedition was to go up to Crest Butte, but the river was so high, they couldn't ford it. So they followed this side of the river, cleared it up to what is now Crested Butte, and came down the other side and then over to the Ohio Creek and over towards Baldwin and in there, and they found ores and different things like that and came back. And then they did some other looking different directions. And but when the next time they came, they laid out the town of Gunnison. Dr. Sylvester Richardson was after his schoolmates had all quit, he went to school and he was a doctor, he was a surveyor, and a lawyer. He was a brilliant man. And so if somebody was sick, he was right there to do it, take care of them. But anyway, then the next year, they formed a colony, and every man put in $1,000. In those days, that was a lot of money.
Yes.
And Daddy was glad he'd saved his wages. Anyway, I got a frog. Anyway, they got out of Denver. And then when they got here, they camped that night and kind of cleaned up. And the next day, they laid the city of Gunnison out. That was their dream, because all of these valleys came into Gunnison, and that was the natural place for a city. They even hoped someday it would be the capital. Then they, when they set it out, how do you think they could figure where to start? How to set it out clear out here? Well, I'll tell you. They put a clipper on the wagon and a knotter on the wheel. Every time the wheel turned, it ticked off how much ground that wheel had covered. I thought that was pretty good in those days. They used what they had. And so when they hit Gunnison, and stayed there, they built Alonzo Hartman had come earlier. He was a herder for when the government brought in the government cattle and the government sheep to feed the Indians, because many had been slaughtered by the white man. And so twice a week they could butcher two beeves. And so one day, one of the Indians, they had to use a white man's gun.
Gun?
A white man's gun. They couldn't use a bow and arrow. That was too cruel. And so when they were getting them this one day, the Indian shot at a beef and hit another Indian on the leg and shattered it. And so it was getting close to the time they'd move out. And so Dr. Sylvester Richardson took care of him and fixed his leg as best he could. And but it was just badly shattered. He took out little slivers of bone and so forth. But anyway, he couldn't travel, and so Daddy made friends with some of the Indians, and they liked him real well. And so they left him at the agency, and he wouldn't sleep on a bed. He laid on the floor and kept his gun by the side of him. He didn't trust him, but he was in a bad position. So one day they showed him the meat barrel was empty, and their gun didn't have any shells. Very reluctantly, he loaned them the gun. And they went out and shot a deer and brought it back, showed it to him, gave him his gun and his empty shells, and counted the rest out to him. And then he kind of brightened up. He was much more friendly. Then later, he got to walking, but Daddy built him a peg leg. And he didn't have much material to work with, but he took some harness leather and fixed up something to go over his shoulder and down kind of towards his leg to kind of help him. And then he got around pretty good. He didn't like his crutch at all. They were no good, no work. Anyway, he got to hobbling around. Spring come, and the Indians, that fall, the Indians were ready to leave when this happened or near. So then when they came back in the spring, he was getting around pretty good.
He stayed all winter with
Well, he
your
had-
dad?
Yeah, because he couldn't ride a horse and he couldn't walk. How
Mhm.
could he go to Denver? They stayed on the Platte River pretty much.
Hmm.
And the next, also, when they were coming out, Daddy had bought 2 real good horses in Denver. And one night they got out, and it was government time, and they tried to find them, but they couldn't. They didn't dare go back. They wouldn't be honest to go back for private property, was. But when the spring Indians came back, they were bringing his 2 horses. They were fat and slick, better than the others. They kept them in the river bed where there was green grass.
Your
That's the way they,
father had very good relations with the Indians.
oh yes, yes. And so when they come back, why, this Indian was so tickled, and he wanted to ride. So Daddy fixed him up this contrivance so he could put his peg leg. He took a old McCulloch army saddle, and if you've seen them, they have a big bow down here and a wide bottom, real wide stirrup on the bottom. And he put a block of wood under that and drilled a hole into the peg leg to fit in.
Clever.
And then it wasn't enough, so he took that off and he put on a bigger one. And he rode all over with that then. And he called it Jan's foot. Foot.
Oh. Jan's foot was his, they called him Jan?
No, John was my dad's
Oh,
name,
John, Jan.
But the stirrup was his foot.
Uh-huh.
He thought I don't know, he thought it was off of Daddy's saddle or something. I don't know why that.
Well, it was a good name.
But anyway, then he got to speaking pretty good in English and helping other people learn Indian at the agency. And then finally, one day he took his horse and he disappeared and come back, and he didn't know where to stay with the Indians or there. Daddy wanted some stuff. He did carpenter work at the Indian agency, and so he gave him he said, told him what he wanted to get from another person. He said, no can no think, can no talk it. So Daddy took a shaving and wrote on what he wanted and gave it to him, and he took it. When he come back, he had the right tools. He still brought that chip of wood back, and he'd shake it and hold it, and he said, "There's no talking to me." And so then, when the massacre was,
Oh, yeah.
that
The Meeker,
Indian.
was it the Meeker massacre?
At Meeker.
well, when the massacre occurred,
Yeah.
there was other branches of it too.
Hmm.
And so that Indian and 2 other Indians come and told Daddy that what was going to happen. And they told Daddy, and there was another man with him, and they had 2 dogs. And he said, dog no bark, man no smoke, no talk, nothing. Shut eyes, nothing. And of course the dogs wanted to bark and stuff, but they took care of that, I guess. Anyway, those Indians laid at that gate post all night. When the Indians had come by, they talked to them and they went on.
That was here.
Right here. On his
Okay,
ranch.
that was something previous to the Meeker part, I think.
And then Daddy had a cabin out here. And in their hurry, they used cottonwoods, quickest wood they can get. Maybe they didn't know that cottonwood wasn't much good anyway. But anyway, it was a small cabin, but it was needed, all he needed. He got some glass and put in a couple of windows, and he had a shelf that he put some money on sometimes when he got it, until he could go to town or do something with it. And Judge Black had come over to see Daddy, and when the Indians come, he left. He was afraid of them. He went over and sat by his horse on that hillside until they left. And so then after they left, he come back, and the money was still there. He couldn't figure that. So he saw one of the Indians in town when he was separate from the others, and he asked him if he went to out-called cabins. So he said, "We go to our teepee. We go to his teepee. We eat, we sleep, we go. We don't take nothing. He don't take nothing." And so Judge Block never forgot that. Anyway, Daddy had good relations with him. Daddy figured they saved his life twice.
Do you, this mostly up to now is before you remember,
It was before I was born.
but, oh, before you were born. Well, yes, it was before your mother came on the scene.
Sure. And so then, no, that was before I was born. Goodness, I'd be awful old.
Now, well, I want to get you up to the point where you remembered some Indians too, but I want to get your mother in the picture first too.
Oh, yes. Well, Daddy then, when he homesteaded here, he broke ground. You had to break so much ground, and he built his cabins and corrals. And he broke some ground, and the land agent, well, you see, he broke the ground and planted grain, and then next year they leveled it again.
What did he plant?
Oats.
Oats for horses.
For horses. And so then the next year they seeded it, and they plowed up some more and put grain in until they could get the ground level enough to irrigate. And so then he had delivery stable, and that way otherwise he'd have to haul with a 4 or 6 horse team the hay clear over to where the army was posted, and that was a long ways. So he put in a livery stable of his own, and then it was close to where the post office is and the school. And then he'd haul hay from here down, feed, and he called it alcohol-free livery stable.
Free.
But the use of the stable was free,
Oh.
but he charged for the feed.
Uh-huh.
And he had a desk there, separate from the business desk, and stationery and stamps, so they could write home when they'd come in. And instead of going to the post office sometimes, they got to addressing them to themselves at Outcoats Livery Stable. And that kind of made a problem to put bins or something. What do I do with it? But anyway, he did that, and he also, on the far end, he divided a room off. And on the one side, he had a bathroom. You know, bath and towels, and there was a wood stove, and they could take boilers and heat the water. They could pump the water right in there, and take baths. And that was quite a treat. And only trouble was lots of the kids wanted to swipe the towels. But anyway, they figured it was pretty near home because they could take a bath, they could write home. And sometimes some of them, there was a spare room there beside where the bathroom was, and with a couch or two that they could sleep on, but he didn't encourage it, but in emergencies he thought it was better.
That livery stable stayed there for a long time, didn't it?
That what?
That livery stable stayed
Yes.
at that point till long after you came on the scene, didn't it?
About the time, somewhere when I was a little kid,
Huh.
it was gone. I was somewhere in grade school. But anyway, then, then he couldn't prove up on the ground because he wasn't living on it. So that's why I sold a livery stable. And then in the meantime, the land agent filed on Daddy's claim and proclaimed that Daddy wasn't legal because he filed on a holiday.
Oh.
So then I've seen the papers where the testimony of Hartman and all the neighbors, Vidal, Smith, Foreman, those people, testified that they'd see Daddy, where he was plowed and how much work he'd done and all. And it was still hanging in Washington, and they came out with a thing that they could buy it. After they'd lived so long, they could buy their claim and not have to live on it, or continue living on it. So, what is that Washington attorney's name? I should remember it.
Was he the land office man?
Yes, in Washington, the head man. Well, his attorney told him that the Washington land office man had just issued this, that these people could pay their claim. and wouldn't have to live on it so long, continue living on it. So he scraped up some money and sent it. Lampton was his attorney. And my memory's getting bad.
Well, that's a long time ago. And
And he got the title to it. And so then he went to Montrose. Well, they kicked him off here. And then he went to Montrose, and he filed on somebody else's claim. And some way he got shot on it. Nobody knew who, but he got shot.
Killed.
Yeah. And so anyway, Daddy had then moved up here, you see. And this little cabin, when Mom and Daddy were first married, Sam, his brother, was to have it cleaned up. They got there and it was filthy. He wasn't a good clean bachelor anyway. And so in her traveling dress, she had to roll up her sleeves, and they cleaned up the cabin before they cooked a meal. Anyway, then when he sold the livery stable, then of course he entirely worked on the ranch. And our first water rights is Outcalt number 1 ditch, the garden ditch.
Outcalt number 1?
And the second one is the Outcalt number 10.
Do those ditches still carry that name?
Yep. And then the garden ditch, it was surveyed in, but I don't think it had a name because they incorporated it with another ditch later. So those water rights are old water rights.
Did your father move out here before he was married?
When he had the livery stable, and you see, he filed on the ground first, and then he had no way to take 4 horses and 2 days to haul hay and 2 days back to where the army was situated. So he got started the livery stable and built it downtown. And then he rented carriages, and people had come in with their horses and put them in the stable, but they paid for the hay and the grain. That's why it was a free livery stable.
Yeah. But your mother came.
Then, when he had the livery stable, my mother and her brother came on an excursion trip. And then they rented a carriage to see the country, and I'm sure Daddy escorted them around and helped them all he could. And then they rode back and forth until Christmas, and was married Christmas Day at her mother's.
In, where was that?
Gary, Indiana.
In Gary, Indiana.
Long ways from here.
Yeah. So when she came back here with him, was there a house on this property?
Well, there was this cabin out here.
Oh, okay.
See. This cabin was here, and she kept the books down at the livery stable then, and they drove back and forth. But they weren't living here, so that's why he had to.
Okay, I see.
They wanted to be legal as they could, because there was quite a bit of claim jumping in those days. Some people would go away for 6 months and get some money to invest in, and somebody tried to jump the claim. But Daddy had looked up Ohio Creek and up here, and he decided, and I think he made the best choice could be made. I love it.
So when did he build a house then? Was this the house he built?
Oh, no. The house he built, I don't know just when it was for sure. But anyway, they put in the foundation pretty much. And he bought 2 houses and put them together. But they took teams and hauled them on wagon or some contrivance up here and set them down. And then he put them together, and that was our home. And we would go upstairs, and there was 4 upstairs bedrooms, rooms.
Well, did that house burn?
That house burned, yes. And then I had to build this one.
Oh, that was sometime later then.
Oh, yes. Yes, but it was up high on the foundation, rock foundation, about that high off the ground.
Your mother was an artist, right?
A what?
An artist?
Oh, yes.
And she wanted to stay out here and,
Well, they fell in love and
Yeah.
that took care of it all. But really, when she was a girl, she wanted to be a nurse. Oh, the folks there, the friends thought that was so nice, you know. And then one day she said, I'm going to be a secretary. Girls don't do that. But her folks was real worried about that. It cost a lot, and you know. And her uncle said, I'm a bachelor and I'm going to pay her tuition. And he did. And she went to Oberlin College
to Oberlin.
and graduated.
Mm-hmm.
And she was the highest grade in the class, and partly because she was so bashful and all over, she was the only girl there, and so she studied real hard. And that's why she was capable of bringing Gunnison County the legislative farm bureau. Well, okay, during the panic, when everybody was broke, Mother read up, and at Wichita, Kansas, the government had set up an office to make loans for agriculture. And so she wrote and got all the information she could, and they had their first meetings in Mama's front parlor. And
Now that was
way back,
the land bank,
Federal Land Bank.
Federal Land Bank.
And when they did that, why, she was a busy lady. The whole county was broke. Nobody had any money. And the interest was very low. And there was one loan that you could pay off in 33 and a half years. And then there was another that was, I think, 18. I'm not sure on that. And every year, the little bit of interest that went on it applied to the note. And each year the note got smaller, the interest payment was larger. And she did that legislative work. I was just a little kid going to grade school up here then. I had a little white apron and I'd press all the ruffles in it real careful and bake a flat cake, and middle of the afternoon I'd serve coffee and cake. I thought I was a big shot.
Yeah, you probably were.
And of course the guys, you know, brag on it. I felt real proud of that. I wouldn't have.
Well, now the land bank, you stayed involved with it for many years, didn't you?
Oh, years and years. That's when I learned to take care of the kitchen and a lot of things. Because so many people, she worked pretty near day and night, you know, getting out loans and pretty near every ranch. Now, there was very few ranches did get a loan. And that is when that land bank law that brought low interest rate to Colorado was the one thing that turned the destiny of agriculture back to where it should be. Because with that high interest, they couldn't pay the interest. It broke them. And this cheaper interest, 4.5%, 5%, and one was 5%, one 4.5%, I think. And they had different specifications. And Mama, well, I still got a file case where she had everybody's papers and everything. And then the Sox Miller and, I can't think of his name. They was real unhappy because they'd been making loans to these people and then taking their land away from them.
Were they bankers?
No, they were local people that loaned big loan ranches money, and then they take the ranch away from them.
Mm-hmm.
And in desperation, people suspected it, but they had to have money. When Federal Land Bank, well, that changed all of that, and they charged 10-12% interest. So then, later, after 10-12 years, they went to the Federal Land Bank and told them that she wasn't efficient, and that people couldn't get to her because she lived in the country, and so forth. Well, when she wanted an office downtown, there wasn't one available. It would accommodate it. And then the people was happy to be here, but when they had the board of directors every month at meeting, I thought I was doing something big to make a nice big flat cake and serve cake and coffee.
You were, tell me about your sisters now, because you're doing the serving for the land bank board when they meet. Where is Delcy and where's
Ramona-
Fernzell and,
Ramona passed away the year when that killer flu went through.
she was grown though, huh?
Oh, yes, she was grown and teaching.
Uh-huh.
She graduated from college in Denver, and she'd taken some work in Fort Collins. And she was highly educated, but she came home for the Christmas vacation, and up at the school we had a program that night, and she went with us. We met her at the train. Then we, uh-oh.
It's all right. Go on.
That's all right. She's gonna. She came in for the program.
Yeah, she was teaching over, she was principal of the high school at Dolores at the time.
Oh.
And she came home for the vacation. And she passed away, and the funeral was outdoors at the, they couldn't have them in churches or anything. And then they started, is it running?
I can't tell. Can you see if it's running now?
No. Didn't.
Oh, it's on pause. Now see if it's running.
Yeah. It's on.
The
This has
funerals
it,
were
so-
all at the cemetery, and they didn't want people to be close to each other when they was there. And so it was not in a church.
Was it in the cemetery that exists
Here at
here?
Gunnison.
That was the flu of 1918.
Got a good memory, hadn't
Yeah.
And so Fernzell could, they didn't think Fernzell better come home. She might get it. She was going to school in Denver. But Daddy had, then about that time, Mother and Daddy had shipped cattle to Denver at the stockyards. And they and a bunch of other ranchers who shipped cattle. They all seemed to ship a lot together because they got a better price. It drew more customers. And so there was flat cars and flat cars of coffins on the siding tracks. But while they were there, one man in the alleyways killed another with a pitchfork. He went berserk, and all of those ranchers that saw it had to go back and be witnesses. And Mama was just, she was just all shook up that I'd be here, and she wasn't here. And so I got along all right. Andy McGowan came and stayed with me.
Well, there must have been Delcy too,
Oh yes, Delcy was here.
and Fernzell.
Well,
No, Fernzell didn't come.
She was in Denver, and Delcy was married,
Oh, I see.
so I was the last one home. There was quite a spare there. Her mother lost a baby,
Uh-huh.
so I was the youngest. And so Annie McGowan came. She was a little early settler lady, widow, and very religious, very neat. But if she didn't have any place to stay, she'd come and stay with the folks in the winter when she didn't have work. And she was just about like someone in the family. But then they, it seemed as if then that made a turning point. When the boys went overseas, one of the, LaFay never came back.
Who didn't come back?
LaFay, Mabel LaFay's husband's brother. And Charlie Goodwin never came back.
Now this would have been World War II.
1918.
18, okay, one. Okay.
And there was a guy up at Baldwin didn't come back. And there were two men from Crested Butte at least that didn't come back that our folks knew. We knew pretty well. And then that brought in another thing. There wasn't much pay to pay those men to offer their lives to help and defend us. And so the government came up with a program that they could homestead land. And a lot of land was homesteaded fast then, even back off of the valley. And some of those homesteads were 640s. Because it was poor land that was left, and the government figured it'd take more land to support a man and his wife and family than it would where they put down on the level ground. And that's why there's a lot of those homesteads yet that are pasture grounds now. Does that answer any of your questions?
That's quite a few of them. So who's running the ranch? You and your dad?
Yep.
And you're the only, you, not having a brother, you're the hand. You're the foreman, huh?
Well, that was a tough situation for a time. Daddy'd tell me to show them this and that, and I would. I knew what he wanted. And then, when Daddy passed away, we hired some hay crew again, and there were 3 young smart alecks that we hired. One was a relation, and I won't mention who. And they thought they were so cockeyed smart, they'd tell me what they were going to do. Finally, I come in one day and told Mama, I want you to write their checks out up to noon and tell them, give them to me to give to them. And when they was at the table in front of all those guys, I said, here are your checks. Your services will no longer be needed on this place.
And your dad stood behind you?
Well, he passed away then.
Oh, I see, that was later.
And so I had a lot of responsibility for a kid. But you know, those guys got up, some of them did, 2 of them didn't finish their meal and left. And you never had a better crew after that. You couldn't have had a better crew. I learned right there, you've got to let people know who you are and who they are and what their job is. But they was telling me what horses they work, what jobs they do. And they weren't very good, so that's what I did.
Well, now you were still living here when you got married.
Oh, yes.
And
And Mother, I was helping Mother, and till she passed away. And as I told you, when we went on Roundup, that's when the first year, Daddy wasn't there, and my sister wasn't there. And Delse got married so young that she didn't do much, then on the ranch here. And so, on the Roundup, Cecil Sampson was range boss. He come over and laid his arm on my horse's mane and looked at me and real straight. He said, you're just a little thing. You can't wrestle calves. Do you think you could rope? And I said, I'll try, or think. I don't know just what I told him. Anyway, I roped. You see, we had half the cattle up there, so we had someone to rope for us and someone to rope for the pool. So I roped. And it was a dirty deal in a way that the guy got. He was a smart aleck. He was half Mexican, and he liked to show off. He'd start out to whirl his lariat and charge down into cattle, stir them all up. And I'd go down quiet and lay him when the calf was sucking, and I'd grab rope the calf and bring it in. And then there's 2 of those old guys, especially one of them asked me to come over. He said, whenever I scratch my ear, you know I've got a calf located for you.
So you were winning friends.
And so then Mr. Sampson did the same thing, the old man. And they'd, holding him, they'd see him when he didn't otherwise. I'd go out and come in with my calf, and he wouldn't have one pretty soon. He got to bringing in calves that weren't mated up, and then he got chewed out pretty good because they had to catch him again and rebrand him with the other brand. And so these 2 old fellows, and then there was another guy that knew the guy, Herman. He was the first year up there, only was there a year or 2, but anyway, he got the picture, and he was kind of a crippled guy, real nice old guy. He said, if I can help you, Annie, I'll watch for any calf that's sucking your cow. And I thanked him, and so I said, well, how will I know? And he said, well, I'll get my pipe out. And if I see a calf, I'll put my pipe in my mouth. Well, there was 3 helpers. And so I'd go out and catch my calf and bring it in. That poor Cyril was so upset. He just, And so then they suggested maybe I could help him, and I said, no, I don't think I better. I might make a mistake. I won't do that. And so then one of their guys went in and helped get the rest of them. But that was
What was that? pool. Who was in the pool with
Oh, Lord. Okay, Sampson, Lucero, Nedick, then coming down this way, I can't think of their
This
name.
was at Spring Creek?
Yes. What was his name?
Oh, that's a good sampling.
Mhm.
That's a good sampling.
No, and then wait, Walker's set some up, and Duncan's, we'd always take Walker's and Duncan's as we went when we took them to Hills, and they were there. And Vevarelle. Vevarelle was the guy that got lost every time. You had, somebody had to ride with him. He couldn't get lost up in the hills and the temple. Anyway, oh yes, and then we had an Anderson for a while, but he was only there a couple, 3 years. But,
Oh, that was pretty good sized pool, wasn't it?
mhm.
I mean, if they all had a handful of cattle.
But, oh, I don't know. My daddy and mother always told me, now if you think you're smart and know a lot, remember, there's a lot of people know more than you do. And I've tried to remember that.
When you got married, your father was already dead,
He had passed away,
but your mother was living.
yes.
So you were still running the ranch, so to speak, for quite a while.
Oh, yes.
Well, ever since then.
Mhm. Well, my first love never came back from service.
Your husband didn't.
No, I said my first love.
Your first love being.
Well, when you see, when the war come out,
You're
I
not
was
gonna
in
tell
high
me.
school, and he was in college.
Oh,
And we were real close friends, but when he went, he wanted me to wait for him.
was he in
Yeah.
college up here?
And he wanted me to wait for him, and I wouldn't go with anybody else, but he never came home. But anyway, then, I don't know, there was lots of exciting things that kept us busy. One year, the snow came early, and there was some horses, a lot of wild horses ran up, half wild horses up in Lost Canyon, Beaver. And there was the ranchers wanted to get them, and Dunbar and Dow Duncan and someone else, one of the Vaders. They were going to go up, and then Dow Duncan, he was different than anybody. He took a pair of snowshoes with him, and they got them coming down the ridge. You see, the ridges are drier on top, and so he turned his horse loose, got on his skis, and come down that ridge and turned them so that they'd come in the into the ranch. Pretty
Oh.
smart guy. But he was real proud of what he could do on those skis. They must have been awful awkward to pack up there.
Now, on his horse, though.
Yep.
Yeah.
I never will forget that. And then there was times when there were fences, there was no fences up in the hills. And when the cattle came down Lost Canyon, why, then they'd ride up here, and they'd have to go clear up to the very top. Well, anyway, sometimes it'd be late. Over where that cement house is, there was a pasture there, and Daddy'd open the gate, scatter some hay, and then when the cattle come down drifting, not going all over the country, they'd go in there. And sometimes he'd put quite a bit of hay out, but one night, they had a terrible time up there. The snow was so deep, pretty near to a horse's belly, and the little calves had trouble getting through, and Daddy had the hired men put hay over there again. And then the guys came over here, and Mama, I think there were 7 of them. The older Vaders were there. The young ones, none of the young ones, and those were the older Vaders. And Tompkins and Sandy, Dunbar, and McConnell. I don't remember. Anyway, there were 7 hungry guys. And so we didn't have beds enough, so they brought out mattresses, bed, whatever they could by the front room stove. And we had no basement stove. They put them on the floor around there, and that was where they slept that night. Next morning, we sorted the cattle and went on.
You have 3 children.
Yes,
Bernard, Ramona,
Richard,
and
Bernard.
Richard. Now,
Ramona is in California. Richard is at Delta. He has multiple sclerosis, and Bernard passed away.
now, Richard is in Delta. Who is Stan's?
He is Bernard's son,
Bernard's,
and he's doing real good.
Okay, they were all on the ranch here as children
Oh, yes.
when you were running it.
Oh, yes. This Christmas tree out here, one time we went to the hills and they dug 3 trees. Put them in the saddlebag, no dirt around them, it'll do anyway. That's the only one that grew. But
Oh.
that thing's about 50-some years old.
Oh, well, that's a good percentage. 1 out of 3. You somewhere along in here you enlarged the ranch, didn't you?
Oh, yes.
And is that when you bought the pasture up Lost Creek,
Yep.
Lost Canyon? And then you had a permit in Spring Creek. You had a permit up Spring Creek, or you went with the pool up to Spring Creek.
Yeah, it's a pool, cattle pool. I don't know how to kernel leaders up
I said permit.
Oh.
But
And then...
I want you to tell me about that period when you actually rode with the cattle up to the summer grazing.
You mean when we go up to Roundup?
Well, you stayed up there some of the time, didn't
Well,
you?
Fernzell did more than I did. And then she had a girlfriend that liked to go with us, Agnes. We always kidded Agnes about her ruffles. Where were they?
Oh, that was her last name?
Ruffle.
Ruffle.
That
Well, when you stayed up there, did you have a cabin
cabin
camp?
and a pasture. We rented a 40-acre pasture of the Forest Reserve, and there was a mining cabin there and a barn. And in those days, people were more honest. When the wheels came, rubber tires, there was a difference. In those days, Daddy'd put wood in the cabin, have a pile of wood outside. Generally, the wood, he'd get one of the prospectors to cut the wood and bring it in, because they needed the money, and they'd come to town, and if we were going up, Daddy'd take pretty near a load of groceries sometimes up for them and stuff they needed. So they were all nice about, doing that. And then when he rented the pasture, he had Mr. Avery fence it one fall and early winter. And he put a bridge across the river so we could get to the horses. And then the horses couldn't walk the bridge, but we could. But anyway, that's something else. Jenny Hanlon and what was her name? One of the teachers and I went up one spring to see if the pasture was all right and if the road and the bridges was in, so we could take the cattle up. When it was time after we'd run the Lost Canyon and take them to Spring Creek. And so we, Hanlon was our sheriff. And Jenny was a lot older than I was. But he said, now I want you to take good care of my Jenny, and I don't want you to let anything go wrong. Well, how did you hike these hills with others and all sorts of things? And so then we got up there and we went to the cabin, stayed all night. Marion, I can't think of that other gal's name. Anyway, they thought that was a great adventure. And then early I got out splitting wood and I had a fit. I woke them up.
Over.
I woke them up by splitting
Oh.
some wood outside. And so then we went to get the horse and walked across the bridge, and Jenny Hanlon I said, well, I'll drive them across, and I rode my horse, and she said, I'm going to ride too, and I said, that was bareback, we just catch them, take them on loads and catch them. So she said, well, she didn't realize that when they stepped down, you got to be careful or they'll go right over their head into the water. That's what she did. And Pat Hanlon told me to be so good and take care of his Jenny. But anyway, she laughed about it. Anyway, then we came back down, and we were just lucky. They'd been wanting pictures and stuff, and they hadn't found any exciting ones, and then we saw a bear and 2 cubs.
Mm.
And the bear was just as anxious to get away from us as we were careful not to bother her. And she kept snapping the Kodak so fast that she didn't get a picture.
Oh, moved all the time, I guess.
Well, she got nervous. Like a fever.
Well, Vevarelle, when after your father died, and you married, and you had 3 kids, and you stayed here on the ranch, and you were the big boss on the ranch, and then ultimately, when your mother died, the ranch was divided, right?
Yes.
So that, but you managed to stay on the old homestead
Yes.
part of the...
And because the Marshall place, the one where Craner's is, was leveler, why Fernsell and Delcy wanted that. And so I was happy they did, because I wanted this water for livestock.
Ah,
I don't have to pump water. Every field's got grazing water in it, running water.
uh-huh.
But they didn't. They were just looking at that flat ground, easier to put the hay up. And so that was the way that went.
And you also, but you maintained a cow-calf operation most of the time, right?
Well, when we settled the estate, that was before we settled this. Why, you see, after Daddy died, we had all that legal stuff and all. By then, they sold the cattle, and so we lost that permit.
Oh, the
That's
Spring
right.
Creek.
Yes, because Zell's husband, Charlie, he didn't think that meant anything. He just couldn't understand that it was worth money. And Bill Dean, he was a railroader, he didn't really think much about it. He just didn't realize the value of it. That's why I bought land, homesteads, 2 homesteads up Lost Canyon.
Oh, it was then, I see. Mm-hmm.
But I survived.
Did you use all your own hay, or were you selling hay that early?
Did what? Oh no, that's grazing ground up there.
No, I mean down the valley.
Mm.
Well, there used to be a train up here, a hay spur.
Yes, and that's where Daddy put a switch in. And we loaded carloads of hay and shipped out there. And the walkers up here loaded cars with cabbage and sent it to Cresta Butte. Those foreigners up there loved kraut. And hauling it with the team took a lot of time, so they'd get a box car and set it on the switch and fill it with cabbage, and then somebody of the Walker family went up and sold it out, and they'd come back and fill up another. They grew acres of cabbage and garden stuff. That's the way they survived. The first year they came, they got a dirty deal. They wrote to the person that had this, and he wrote back and forth and said they had the place here, and there was hay, and there was all this stuff. When they got there, there was nothing practically. Gillespie gave them some milk cows, and they were wonderful people. He was a cripple when this arm, something had happened, but he'd pitch hay like you couldn't believe with one hand. And he stacked for Daddy because that was bigger money. But they said, even at the family reunion, and I'm always invited to it, that they'd never survived that first winter if it hadn't have been for the outcalls. Because we had hay and extra vegetables in the cellar and things like that. And they were a fine family. They'd go to church every Sunday. She and the girls rode in kind of a vegetable hauling spring wagon that they could put 2 or 3 seats in, and the boys walked down the track. And at the old church down in the west end of town, as you see a brick building, that was a church and a school at one time.
Is still there?
Yeah, but it's a wreck.
Okay.
And that on Sunday it was church, and it was a school the rest of the week.
Was there never a church out here?
What?
Was there never a church out here?
Not out here. But
Okay.
in Gunnison there was, yes.
But there was, let's get to the school then. There was a school, Paragon
Yes,
Schoolhouse.
Paragon School. And
I
the
want you-
history of Paragon School was the log cabin was so small, and there were so many kids, and it was getting in bad shape. And so Mr. Albright, the old bachelor, not the ones with a family, if you please. And
No
one day-
relation?
Huh?
No relation?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
And he was such a strong person for education, because he hadn't very much. And so he and Daddy went all members of the neighborhood, for the district rather, and told them they wanted to have a meeting at the schoolhouse and to see if we should build a new building or what we should do, try to repair and enlarge that. And so some of the peoples didn't want a new building, fancy when they thought that their kids would be ashamed of their homes, but the vote was to build it. So then they sent Daddy, he was the president, Mrs. Walker was she was treasurer, and I can't think of his name. Wilson was secretary. And so he went to Denver and brought back various plots of buildings and pictures of them that they could build, and that was what they pictured. So then Daddy went to the railroad and explained we had to have a new schoolhouse, and that they paid half of the taxes in Gunnison, or in this district, which they did. And so Lampton told Daddy that they'd lay this stuff down here free. And Daddy volunteered that he and his neighbors would haul it up to the side of the schoolhouse. So they eliminated that expense. And they even put that stuff in a locked cars.
In a what?
In locked cars.
In locked cars.
Daddy was surprised.
Okay, did your dad design that school?
Huh?
Did your father design that school?
He went to Denver, as I told you, and looked, they had different types of schools that you could see and you could figure out what you needed. And so he brought back 3 or 4 models, and this is the one they picked.
The one with the turret window.
Yes. Yes. And so then they,
And that is the one that's on the museum grounds now.
he what?
That is the building that's on the museum grounds.
Well, you see, I better clear this.
Yes, please.
Up at the schoolhouse, Wilson gave that acre of ground for the school. That is Phoebe's uncle, Phoebe Crean.
This is Wilson Walker.
Yes, and he was on the school board that year. So anyway, that's the way they did that. And when they got the material up there, once a week on Sunday afternoon, Daddy every Sunday afternoon went up and checked the work as it went. They had a big basement for a future furnace, which was never used. And so then they boarded up the doorway to it. And the rock foundation was about that high. And the steps come out, and oh, that was nice. Anyway, he started building, and as a little kid, it was fascinating. He'd take me up, and they'd take the shingles for the roof, and they'd submerge them. They'd loosen the bands on the bundle and submerge it in the linseed oil, and they'd have a little fire under that linseed oil to keep it hot, so that the wood would absorb more of it. And that was so substantial that when I was on the school board, a generation later, those shingles was the first that they started going off and had to be recovered. Now that's the way they took time to do things right.
Mm-hmm.
And the builders were good, but Daddy'd go up to the buggy, and he'd get up on a step ladder, and where all the joists come together in the corner, he'd check every one of them. And then they put the belfry on. I always wanted so bad to go up that ladder at the belfry. You're a girl, you can't climb up there. That was not good.
You never did?
Not then, no. Then when a bunch of us kids were in school, we did.
Good.
Took a lot longer. And Mrs. Jennings donated the bell that you could hear all over the neighborhood. It had come from Sapanero when she was down there, and they just cut that school out. And but when we were little kids, we rode to school, to the new school up here. I was quite small when it started. And so both districts were so hard up, they didn't have tax money. So the Cunningham School across the river, they would have school half of the year, half of the 9 months, and up here half of the 9 months. It ended up not being 8 months because there wasn't money enough for a teacher. And so these kids would all go over there, and in the winter they'd come over here. And one of my delights as I got older was to make the kids happy. They had sleds up there that you could pull, and I'd take a rope and my saddle horse, and I'd run my horse up to the bridge and back and take a kid at a time, and they thought that was fun, and I loved doing it. I had more fun than they did.
Where was the Cunningham School? Across the river?
It's across
north?
the river, yes, over where, well, it's gone now. It's close to where Silky's are.
And Silky's where Stan is?
What?
Is that where Stan is?
That's which stand?
Your Stan.
My stand?
Not up that way.
No.
Not
stand
across.
My grandson lives up Los Canyon away.
Oh, okay. We're talking about the river north then.
Yes, over
Okay.
here, across the Gunnison.
Okay.
And, well, you got a chance?
Well, that's all right. It's picking it up on the air, so you can just keep talking. Because there's a microphone at the other end, too. Marcia, why don't you push those down for me?
Okay. We're in business again.
Okay.
This is in business all the time.
I was pretty little when we went to the Cunningham schoolhouse, and we drove over with my sisters and I with a buggy. They'd take me along, and then we played with the Smith kids. And we had a lot of fun, those Smith kids, and I was about the same age. And those daggum little kids were musical. You couldn't believe it. I envied them. They didn't have to be very big, and they could sing and carry a tune.
How many in the class? How many in the school, in Cunningham School? Was it as big as Paragon?
It was a much smaller school building, but they had it pretty well filled at those days. Now, the Smiths was a big family, and all the Lightly, and it's hard for me to remember the names of the kids when I was so little.
Yeah.
But the Smiths, I got better acquainted with. And the same teacher might teach here as taught over there.
Uh-huh.
But you see, they just didn't have that much money. And when they built this schoolhouse, it isn't like they do now, what bonds and drawn out. They voted enough money to pay for it the first year. And they couldn't quite make it, so they voted a little to pay it off the second year. No drug out interest rates.
Mm-hmm. But was it built by people who, parents of students?
It was a county, it was a tax thing.
You contracted to have somebody build it?
District, yes, but the district, you see, they were very careful of not wasting money.
Mm-hmm. On that window, that fascinates me.
It's a library was in there. And that's
That was the library?
that was-
Oh, and the lunchroom or something too?
Well, sometimes, but they were very careful of that window, so we had to play baseball or ball in the back of the school, so we wouldn't break.
So you wouldn't break the window. Did those windows have to come from away? They
They
were
were specially made.
specially made. And I suppose they still are. If they break one now, they have to get it specially made.
I'd think so.
Uh-huh.
But anyway.
Is there a belfry in that building now?
Is what?
Is the bell in that building now?
I don't know. I don't know.
No.
When they took the building down, I think Mrs. Jennings wanted it back. And then when this doctor bought her place, I don't know what happened. She had a treasure of old things there that he took to the dump.
There on the river, across from Rocky River.
On this side of the river. But, no, we drove across with a buggy to school, and we just drove down here to the bridge and went back up. And you see, that was open ground down there. We just went a short ways where it was fenced, it was open ground.
I want to get to modern times. When you, well, you were running the ranch here and selling a cow-calf operation, then you had an accident? Hurt your hip? Didn't you? Or broke your arm first? That was it, your
When I
shoulder.
was 13, I broke my arm on a racetrack. I had a little mare, a pretty good little mare. And this Mexican jockey, he was the littlest man you ever saw. And this was supposed to be putting your Achilles one. And anyway, he swung way out, and I was picking up the space, and he got there, and he was hitting my horse with a bat on the head, and it was over and hit the post. And I had a broken leg,
A broken leg?
or broken arm,
Broken arm.
and no leg that time. I broke this up at the head gate. And so then, that's what I got out of it. Well, anyway, then when they found out that he wasn't a kid, and he was older, but he was a little runt, why, he was a jockey professional too. But anyway, they barred him at Montrose right down the line. I don't know how they did it, but they did it.
But you did have some kind of an injury to your shoulder later, after
Yep.
you were on this property alone, and
Yep. I was, I'll tell you what it was. I had a log chain working up at the head gate. We had trash in there, and we needed to put it to a tree to winch it up. And there was a log there, and I was dragging this chain over the log, and the branch broke, and it let me drop me down here, and I hit my arm over a log.
and that laid you up. Doctor said you weren't going to use that arm very much.
Well, I did.
Well, I know you outfooled him, but what I'm getting at is that's when you actually reduced your cow-calf operation.
Well, when we reduced that was when Daddy was here. And then when I started mine up, I ran up in Lost Canyon. And of course, we could get longer permits up there. And I don't know, then when my kids were in school, I was on the school board. H.F. Trampy was on the school board, Mrs. Martin. They were both remarkable good people on the school board. Mr. Trampy taught me more things that I should have known and been glad I did learn.
That would be Bill's grandfather?
Yes, and you see, he came on a bicycle from Salida and taught over towards Sargent's or somewhere up there. And then he homesteaded up here. And he was a brilliant man. But anyway, he, on the school, now he was pretty tight too when we voted on what to spend and so forth. And we paid the teacher and that. And every time we came to a board meeting at the schoolhouse, he brought an armload of books, good books for the library, donated them.
Well, when you second time did away with the cow-calf operation and just started feeding weaners over the winter, and but you continued to ride, your arm healed,
Oh, yeah.
and you continued to operate this ranch,
Oh, yeah.
and at the same time you were doing Farm Bureau,
Yes.
Land Bank, Extension, Water, Chamber of Commerce Woman of the Year, or Rancher of the Year. There were all sorts of things happened to you in that period when
Yeah.
other people were beginning to wind down.
Well, I guess I had a tighter spring to keep me bouncing out of it.
That's good.
But
You were never one to hold your tongue in a meeting when it had to do with agricultural economics, or
I don't know why they stuck me on all those. For the life of me, I don't.
because you were vocal.
I don't know, but I'll tell you, when I did legislative work for Farm Bureau, we traveled a lot from state to state for some meetings, and some was, at Denver. But some way, I don't know how I did it. I didn't ask for it, but it seemed like those things just came to me. But anyway, I enjoyed the legislative work. I really did. I worked hard on it. I've got a lot of things here now, and I would have been done longer, but finally, won't mention names. We had, when Paul Manning, I'll go back, when he was our president, that was the best president I ever worked under. And when he sold that place, he couldn't be anymore. And then others, we had some other awful good ones. Then we got a couple fellows in there, and one was a president. His dad was a pretty good president, and everything when we talked things over and all, but he would not go to the mic. Didn't matter where we were, here, Denver, where he would not go to the mic. I had to do it.
Oh, I see. That's how you got into it.
Well, I've been in it quite a while then, and I kept that up and for years and years. And then we had a new president and a secretary, and they'd vote okay. They had a secretary.
Let me
I want to back up.
Okay, this is Farm Bureau you're talking. Yes, okay.
They had a secretary, and her husband was tunnel vision, and he didn't like to stay home, so they wanted to go to her house. She wanted them at her house to have the meetings there. Well, that sounded all right. And then he'd vote just like he belonged. But anyway, then pretty quick they brought in, I won't mention names. One brought in a batch of beer and some whiskey for mixers and stuff, and that didn't fit very good. And some of us kicked, so then they decided that they'd go to a restaurant, but there was a bar there too, so what did you gain? And finally, this one president, he asked me, his dad, don't forget, had been a good president, but he's a little different. So I needed some stationery and so forth, and it wasn't forthcoming. And he said, I want to see a copy of every letter you've ever written. Well, thank the Lord, I had a box about this long. And I toted that darn thing down. And then things just weren't looking right, so I resigned.
Oh. You got out of some of it anyhow. Well, you've had a very active
Well, for just a high
economist.
school kid.
Well, you kept your finger in the excitement of agricultural politics, I know, for many, many years.
But now don't ask me how I got to take a trip to China or to...
I'm going to. I'm going to. You were given a trip to Japan
China and Korea.
Japan,
China
and Korea.
And then we ended
And that
up
was
for
because
3
of
days
your
at
prowess
Fort
in hay production,
What?
wasn't it? That was, okay, you tell me why you went to,
Well, the way I met them was they bought my hay.
yeah, that's what,
And those guys, they'd come around with little bags, and they'd get up where it was stacked, and they'd pull a little out and make notations, I don't know what, and so forth. And then they'd go on my Jeep instead of the guy that brought them up that followed with his car. They'd have 3 crowd in my little Jeep. We were going across the field, and a bunch of deer jumped up. And they catch him. Well, it went pretty fast. And when they jumped the right away, they'd say, "Yahaki, yahaki, yahaki."
yucky.
Anyway, then that I don't know which had the most impact, but anyway, that was quite a trip, and it cost them a lot of money, and it was a great education to me.
Yes, that was fairly recently.
Like 7, 8 years
Oh,
ago. But I don't know. I don't know how I was dumb enough to get entangled in all these things.
oh, not dumb enough. Look what you got out of it, and look what you did for the community.
Well, I hope I did a lot for them.
Well, you certainly have. And I just love to come out here and talk to you. So I'll probably think up another reason to come too, but you've certainly brought us up to date
Well, partly.
for this partly. I know you've got much more to tell, and maybe we'll be back. But this will do for right now for the library, and thanks very much, Vevarelle.
Well, I enjoy doing it if I can help anyway. But when you come to library, I have got a lot of old stuff that should be cataloged. A lot that I've given them and it's never been touched. There's not enough people to work that stuff over.
We have a new librarian, you know.